You are listening to Aim Higher, a Catholic podcast designed to instruct and to encourage the daily practice of our faith. Pax et bonum, peace and good to you all. You're listening to Aim Higher podcast with Father Anthony, Sister Catherine, and with us today is his most reverend. I got myself tongue-tied. Is Most Reverend Giles Butler, O.F.M. Good morning, Your Excellency. Good morning, Sister.
Good morning, Father.
Good morning, Father.
I just couldn't get it out. What we do before we start recording. We started recording. Never mind. As far as you know, this is when the recording started, and we say a prayer. Now, you might wonder, does Father ever get nervous? I get nervous saying a prayer in front of the bishop because I'm like, okay, am I saying it right? Am I doing the prayer correctly? It was because we had a question a few months ago. I said a prayer and said, forever and ever. He says, why do you say that? Oh, no, that's the way I don't know. It's the way I remember learning it as a kid. And or I just wanted to put that exclamation point upon eternity. I mean, forever is forever. It's not you can't get more than that. So you make question, and then I say prayers with Brother Thomas, and then he and I both kind of pause. And are we going to add the extra forever? I think we finally have gotten to the point we don't do it anymore.
That's the after meal prayer, right?
Yes, the after meal prayer. It's also like the St. Michael prayer. Sometimes someone adds, but just say, instead of saying the power of God, the divine power of God. So everyone says just a little bit different, but I think I got people say it all the same. And I've realized I'm the one who's changing it, I guess. But when you say, here's a question, you say the divine power of God. Well, that's just kind of saying power of God, because it's already divine. Mm-hmm. It's kind of unnecessary to say. It's the mediocre power of God. There's no such thing. It's ridiculous. So it's unnecessary word usage. Speaking of necessary word usage, well, I think it's necessary because we made a promise. And when we make a promise on Aim Higher, we keep that promise unless we totally forget about it.
But I said
because we are busy.
I wrote a note. To be fair, I was listening to the last episode. I was like, oh yeah, I have to do that today. So I have to make sure we release that one before we release this one.
that would be hilarious. We should put this one out. Yeah, but I'm finishing up the video today. I got this already got it for the podcast. I just gotta put for the video, and I should get that all done today. Excellent. So we should be all set.
Okay, so,
but now I'm gonna have to ask, what was you mentioned a movie?
So
what was
in
the
last episode
context? I don't remember.
You're talking about silence, just keeping silence, and of course you were referring to the inner silence, interior silence, and I was like, well, I don't know if I could, and I thought you meant we were going to just sit here for an episode quietly, and I was like, I don't think I can do that, and then I said, well, I can be quiet if I set my mind to it, and I said that's from a movie, and you did have a wrong guess the first time.
I did.
You were wrong. But you did guess it, and you put it in the chat box. And so the movie is Anne of Green Gables. And not just any Anne of Green Gables. It has to be from 1985. All this other stuff
it's
that they're doing
one.
with Anne with an E.
It's only one.
Yep.
There's no other.
Yep. And I think anyone that has seen the 1985 version and may have subjected themselves to some of the newer stuff knows what I'm talking about. So it is superior.
I don't know because it's only 1985.
Okay. There was a movie we saw that came on TV once, and I don't know.
Well, I know I actually saw one like made back in like the 40s or something. I didn't watch the whole thing because then I just went, oh, Anne of Green Gables. I'm going to watch the one from 1985.
It's very good.
So that's all it makes you, stop to think. But no, it is a great book, I guess. Never read the book. I was introduced. It's a great book. It was a great movie, so it's got to be a great book. It was a really bad book and great screenwriters. But I remember first being introduced to Anne of Green Gables back when we had school at Our Lady of the Rosary, and Father Joseph it was like our literature class. And I guess Father's like, you all ain't going to read the book, so we're just going to watch the movie. But, it's not like we watched the whole movie. We would only watch in sections, and then we had to basically do a report on that section. And he took all the fun out of it. But I remember the movie, and it was excellent. I remember introducing our brother to it. It was one of those things like, wow, I never knew this movie existed. And then I was like, did you know it was a book? He's like, yes, I did. So, but it was fun. Yes, Anne of Green Gables. And what was my other guess? Oh, Heidi.
Which was one of my favorite movies as a child. So I wanted to live in the mountains.
Is that the one of Shirley Temple?
Mm-hmm. I mean, they did do a couple of remakes.
Yeah, there was one remake. I thought it was pretty good.
There was a mini series that Disney actually did that was pretty decent, but anyway.
Yeah. All right, that's all we have for today on Aim Higher.
And that's why we brought the bishop. That's
why we brought the bishop, just so he can listen to us talk about mundane things.
He's used to listening to me talk about mundane things.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Like you. I'm kidding. You're not mundane.
Well, actually, I am quite mundane. We're all mundane, you think about it. So, anyway, the topic for today, for the episode, actually, I don't know. Is it we're basically kind of doing an interview, or we're just doing a discussion? We'll say a discussion, because I don't necessarily have any questions for you, Your Excellency. Only what will, occur to me in the conversation. So a lot of this is being put upon you, but it should be pretty easy because it's an article you just recently wrote. It's in the newest issue of the Seraph. I kind of feel like I need to remind you. I feel like that's what I'm doing. You wrote an article, right, Your Excellency?
And he's writing other ones right now.
You do realize that this was written, at least a month ago?
Two months.
That's true.
Before it's published.
It is funny when people talk to you about something. It's like, yeah, that sounds good. What did I write? Could you please explain this? It's like I'll listen to like the third order minutes and the article, and my father, will read the minutes and read my sermon, do the cliff notes. I'm just going, oh, okay, yeah, that was pretty informative. That's what I talked about. Really? I was like, I have no recollection. But
that's what your father heard.
That's what we don't know if that's what I said.
No, doesn't he still use Sister Sonia?
He does use Sister Sonia. So, I mean, he doesn't read the minutes anymore, the sermon in the minutes, because time, I guess, which is fine.
And Sister Sonia is just a little recorder, a Sony
voice
recorder.
Yeah.
Or is it Sister Sony? But it seemed
we call her Sonia.
Okay.
I think it's fitting. But anyway, from the silly to the sublime, the article in question here is the inner voice. So it does kind of go back to what we talked about in our last podcast about silence within prayer and all the various aspects contained within that. So, Your Excellency, I guess I will begin with a question, because that's the best way to do it, instead of just saying have at it. But you never really need a reason to write on a topic such as this, anything dealing with prayer. But what inspired you to write it for this issue? What brought it to your mind?
Well, this was actually a lesson I was trying to instill in the minds of the children in Kentucky during our children's retreat. And traditionally, during the children's retreat, I have the position, I don't know whether I've assumed this or been assigned this position, but I generally take the children into the chapel to show them the house of God, the different parts of the house of God, the statues, and we go over how to behave in church, and we're dealing with some pretty small children. And of course, the problem with children in church is generally getting them to behave, getting them to sit still, getting them to be quiet. And I try to make things interesting for the children to keep their minds occupied, because when our bodies must be still, our minds have to be doing something. And if there's nothing for our mind to be engaged in, then our bodies are not going to sit still. Children have a lot of energy. And so I thought we need to break down and make mental prayer accessible to these children, because really that is what they need. They learn their prayers and their catechism. They learn the Hail Mary, the Our Father, the Apostles' Creed, the Glory Be, their act of contrition. They learn all these things in their catechism, but these are all vocal prayers. And of course, when you're at Mass, you are told to be quiet. We don't really pray, which is something I've been contemplating, is introducing some of these children to perhaps a dialogue Mass. Years ago, when I had a grammar school, I did teach all the children in the grammar school the responses, the server's responses, and we would basically have a dialogue Mass during the day. And each and every day of the school year, the children would all come. And I was really, I don't know, surprised, dumbfounded that the girls seemed to know the prayers better and to answer better than the boys, but the girls were not allowed to serve.
Yeah. Is that kind of the humorous? It's a lot. It's the girls, a lot of ways would be better at it than the boys would. But what can you do?
There we were. And I think this was helpful to the children in school because they could all be engaged in the Mass. Mm-hmm. They were watching the priest, they were waiting for the cues, they were thinking of their next response, and they are engaged mentally with the Mass. And I'm trying to give these children, a lot of these are well too young for that even. So the idea occurred to me that we need to introduce them to this inner voice, to mental prayer, to silence, and that this is something that they can do. And so I began with the idea, I'm sure parents teach their children to use their inside voice. And so we practiced using our inside voice. And I showed them that we have an outside voice when we can get just as loud as we want. And so the really little ones we took outside and we yelled just as loud as we could, "Hello, Jesus." And then when we went into the vestibule, we used our inside voice in the vestibule to say quietly, "Hello, Jesus." But then when we go into the nave of the church proper, then we have to use an interior voice, a voice where we don't make any sound with our lips, with our mouth, but it is in our hearts, in our minds. And so we practice this, and I would have all the little children, okay, on the count of 3, we're all going to say, "Hello, Jesus," with our interior voice. Remember, the interior voice, we don't make any noise. Okay, so then I would count to 3, and then there's one little boy every time at 1, 2, 3, "Hello, Jesus." And he would say it out loud, and I would remind him again, no, our interior voice, we don't make any sound. So I said to his mother later on, I says, I don't know whether he's just messing with me or he just doesn't understand. But everybody else seemed to get it. But they were very happy to go outside and express themselves in a nice, loud voice. And And of course, the idea is to make it interesting for the children, give them something to think about. But this was just part of my lessons, if you will, at the retreat. We went through extensively how to genuflect, how to make the sign of the cross, how to fold our hands, and all of these things. But it's heading up to this idea that we can talk to Jesus in our hearts and minds without saying any words. And we can do this in church, and we can do this any place, anytime. The rest of the world doesn't have to even know. And really, we can steal away in our hearts and our minds while anything else is going on and talk to Jesus. And of course, in the article, I went one step further, suggesting that not only can we talk to Jesus in the quiet of our hearts and our minds without making audible prayers, but we can just be still in our hearts and minds. And of course, that's going to be the next lesson for the children, getting your body still, but now we need to still our minds so that we can listen. We cannot do all the talking, but from time to time, we have to stop and listen. And of course, when we're listening in church to Jesus in the tabernacle, we don't hear anything audible, but we need to listen to the voice that's in our hearts, in our minds, which is our conscience, our guardian angel, perhaps God speaking to us through the lives of the saints. And of course, all of this leads us into meditative prayer. And this is really a high ideal, which many adults don't get, but I don't think it is out of the reach of even little children. And that is really the point of writing this, was to express to the adults, this is what I'm trying to get your children to listen to understand, and to practice. And of course, if I can get the parents to do it, it will be easier for the children. The children, well, we are all creatures, social creatures, and we tend to imitate and to live up to the environment in which we are in. And children look to their parents and they say, well, how does mommy and daddy act? That's how I'm going to act. And trying to get children to be quiet in church is very difficult when their parents are saying, shh, be quiet, shh. You're telling me to be quiet while you're making all kinds of noise. And I need the parents to learn to be quiet and not to make these noises. And so the children will imitate what they see parents do. And I have seen older brothers and sisters tell their younger brothers and sisters, shh, be quiet, you're in church, don't talk out loud. And the whole purpose has been defeated. But I don't blame these children. I blame their parents, because they've learned this from their parents. And so I think really the instruction that shh, be quiet, we're in church, should be done before Mass. If it's necessary to take the child out, then you can shush them outside. But inside the church is the time to be quiet. A stern look, pat on the head, just simply grabbing them by the hand and squeezing a little bit to get their attention, whatever it may be. But I think it needs to be more silent, without drawing attention to the child, to where we are, surrounded by these other people. And of course, I've suggested to parents, you want to teach your children how to behave in church. The time to do that is not during Mass. Really, the church, especially in Kentucky, is open all the time. Come during the week. If you've got a special prayer or special intention, bring your child to church when no one else is there. Just God, the angels. Go light a candle, leave a donation in the donation box, kneel at the communion rail, and say a simple prayer to Jesus or to the Blessed Mother. And you can say it out loud in a hushed tone, and have your child right there, watching you, hearing you. You can let the child light the candle. You can let the child put the donation in the collection box, or, and the child can make their own prayer. Doesn't have to be long, just a couple minutes, make the sign of the cross and leave, genuflecting appropriately. I think those few minutes will teach your child much more than being in mass and shushing them the whole time, giving them, what is that, the evil eye there, threatening them. They need to see this put into practice rather than hear it. We learn by observation. We learn by imitation. And so it's hard to show children how to pray interiorly. So we have to describe this to them. We have to help them understand that we have these different voices, and that we need to learn when to use them and how to use them.
Well, I was just thinking when you talked about the reaction when the child is talking and the parent to go, shh, be quiet. Probably part of the reason why they do that is because it's not necessarily for the child per se, but to let everybody else know around you, you are taking care of the disruption. Because, and what I like how you pointed out in this article is the reminder about God has given us life and energy, and children have an abundance of it. And how quickly, as we get older, we forget about that. And we like to think, well, back in my day, if I would have made a peep, I would have gotten beaten with an inch of my life. And I'm like, or they're just, there weren't children back in those days, or there was a children's mass, or mom and dad could split up and tag team. Mm-hmm. And of course, I don't think that was the best thing either. It is always better to bring them to mass. It's going to be hard. But so I think I can see why a parent might want to show some sort of discipline, because people notice, and some people make sure that you see that they noticed. Back when I was in Wisconsin, if there was, when we had some little children, you could tell the parents are trying to do their best, and you just offer a prayer for, I would offer prayer for the family, but also for anyone who is triggered by the noise and then letting that bother them. So, and I've told parents, it is good. We know it's going to be hard, and you're doing the best that you can. It's like the only time I think a person, of course, I don't think anybody should really approach, or I should just say, it's not like you're letting your child just stand in the aisle and dance around and not doing anything. These are not what the parents are letting happen. The children are, most of the times, are at their age level, making age appropriate reactions. And it's just guiding them to finding, or to get that balance. Like, well, there's a time and a place. And it's something that has to be taught over and over. You can't just make the one correction and expect it to stick. And it just baffles me sometimes how quickly we forget, whether we've raised children or just when you get older and things that didn't bother before does bother you now. But we need to show a lot more. We would need to have a lot more grace for the people that are having children, bringing them to church, and to continue the Catholic faith.
I think our Lord said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." I did see, I think it was a Protestant who I got the quote from, but it says, "The church that is not crying is dying." So we need children in the Mass that are going to be crying, that need attention, but we need parents that are going to take them out. I've had elderly people tell me, when I was their age, that would never have been permitted. And I'm saying that's a lie, because you don't remember when you were 2 years old. I don't know how you behaved when you were 2 years old. You're older than I am, but I know that when you were 2 years old, you don't know how you were behaving. You don't remember that. And I doubt that you were the perfect child at 2 years old or younger. Right. Infants are going to cry. They're going to need to be fed. They're going to need to be changed, whatever. They have no conception of that they are at Mass, and now that they've got to hold their bowels and hold their bladder, and they have to silence the grumblings of their stomach. That's completely beyond them, but they can sense that mom and dad are quiet, they are calm, and this is a time to be still.
Mhm.
It will come with time, but the children will sense that. Even the infants, I think, sense that. And
Mhm.
so parents need to portray this. And I am of the opinion that most of these parents don't want the attention of the rest of the parishioners.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
my kid is misbehaving, I don't want everybody looking at me. I will do my best to correct the child or take the child out. If the child is yelling, I'm thinking,
Mhm.
well, if the parent doesn't do anything, it's not because the parent doesn't care. The parent is probably thinking, this is almost over. That my child is going to stop in just a minute,
Yep.
and they're waiting for that. And I don't want to assume that the parents are poking their child or with a pin and making them scream just because they want everybody in the church to look at them.
Mhm.
See me, I've got my children here and they're screaming, and it's okay with me. You all have to get used to it, adapt.
Oh, that's a variation of Munchausen syndrome. Yeah. It's like I
By
want to
proxy?
put my hmm.
Is that by proxy? Would that be by proxy? Munchausen's by proxy?
Mm. I don't know. Maybe. Sounds about right. I you try to teach the children the proper etiquette in church, but they're at a certain age. We're talking about, we mentioned age of like, well, 1, 2, even 3. That's, you can give them a little bit of understanding. I mean, can I get upset if I'm saying mass or I'm distributing community, the little kid there, and they say Jesus? Am I going to turn to the kid and say, be quiet, don't talk? They're merely acknowledging what their mother and father have taught them. That's Jesus. Or they look at the crucifix. That's Jesus. That's Mary.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to turn to that child and tell them to be quiet because they're enthusiastic. You want to encourage enthusiasm, and enthusiasm. But then you're trying to direct it toward time and a place. And like you've mentioned, Your Excellency, learning the inner voice. And in your verse sentence in your article is, silent prayer is more challenging than it sounds, but is necessary for everyone to learn. Where focus has been on children, but this is a lesson for everybody. And you're hoping that if you begin at an early age, it will become easier as they grow older and it develops into a more perfect silence. And what is the essence of this silence? It's a lot of it is the controlling of our imaginations, controlling where our thoughts go, focusing in on the mass itself. We're dealing with predominantly the mass here and praying during mass, but this can be applied to really any prayer. If you're reading a prayer or a meditation, you're focusing on that. Then you're focusing on the thought of that on the topic of that meditation. And we've discussed meditation on the podcast quite a few times, and to encourage people is that if your sentiments, affections turn to one topic, maybe it might not even really be what you read about. Don't dismiss that. That's God inspiring you in that moment. If it stirs your devotion for the love of God, then it is a good thing. But I think a lot of people we're naturally built this way because God made us, and we're built to have this silence because we're not only physical, we're spiritual. One of the things that really gets in the way is the constant need for noise, the constant need for entertainment. I was actually having a conversation yesterday or the day before. I was in Iowa talking with a family, and we're going over how, with the technology we have today, that especially children on phones become addicted to these phones, and that they describe it that it's like worse than a person on like cocaine or anything of that nature, because this is like you're stimulating their endorphins constantly. So you take that away, and they honestly don't know what to do with themselves. And this is what they grew up with. This is what they consider normal to have this all the time. So it's even harder to get them off of that. And one person brought up to me, who is in the medical field, that it affects the development of the brain if you're constantly feeding it with all this entertainment. Now, I bring this up because then that means it affects a child's ability to truly learn meditation. I mean, we already know it's difficult for an adult to do it, but for a child, you're creating a unnecessary stumbling block by having all these distractions. What a child looks to meditate on would have to be something, I would assume, rather simple. I mean, we're even encouraged to think of simple things, not to overcomplicate our meditation, because then it becomes convoluted and we get confused. But to simply think about, you talk about during the Mass, you tell your child, what is the Mass? When the priest raises the host, what do you say? My Lord and my God. What does that mean? And these are the things that you should be talking to your children about beforehand. I actually had another time this weekend. I was with a family, and they were asking, what can we do? What's like the most important bit of advice you can give? We're talking to my father, actually, about raising children, good Catholic children. And I didn't give him a chance to respond because we were so close to the end. And I said, well, how about you let the one who is the byproduct of that respond? And I said, your example is so important. The example you give. If you don't take time to think about God, your child's not going to think about God. If you don't talk to them about you're thinking about God, they're not going to know that. You have to have these conversations, and it shouldn't be a forced conversation. It should actually, there should be nothing more natural for us than talking about our religion with one another. As St. Paul said, we speak to one another in psalms and spiritual songs, which really is, especially towards our family and those whom we are bringing up in the faith.
I remember growing up, a common question my father would ask us as his children was, what are you thinking about? What's going on in your mind? And of course, every child, what is our first response? Nothing.
Yeah,
but you cannot think of nothing. You must be thinking of something. But truly, when we're constantly exposed to, I'll call it noise. In my day, it was the radio or the television. But now we have this constant background noise everywhere you go. You can't go shopping without something over the loudspeakers, the intercom, the airport. When you're boarding
they get the subliminal messages in.
There is this constant barrage of noise, and there is no time to think. And I really try to emphasize this with the children, that they need to silence everything so that they can think. We need to use our imagination. I know there's a lot of literature saying we must control our imagination, we must stifle our imagination, but I look at our imagination as a gift from God. It is something good. If it weren't for our imagination, we wouldn't have this cell phone, we wouldn't have the internet, we would not have radio, we would not have television. These things were developed in someone's imagination long before they were put into practical use. And I think really when we're stifling that imagination, we are stifling God's creativeness in mankind, in these children. I look at, why are children struggling with mathematics and science? Well, they're given the information, memorize it, regurgitate it, and hand it back to me. Don't bother thinking about it, trying to understand or manipulate or experiment. I know growing up as a young boy, that was a major thing with me. I have to do an experiment. What will happen if I mix this with that? And everything was an experiment. Let's try this. Let's try that.
And your eyebrows grew back.
And they did. We learned all about fire and electricity and all the things that, oh no, that's not safe. You
Acid.
You can't let the children play with this. You can't let the children do that. They could get hurt. And I have always been a promoter of letting children experience things. Yes, you have to draw limits. You don't want them to get seriously hurt.
Yeah, we're not promoting carelessness, people, but
they have to be able to experience things and fail. And of course, my question after they do something that is stupid or whatever it may be, what did we learn from this?
That is his question.
What can we take away from this? Well, I'm not going to do that again. We've learned something, and that makes it all worthwhile.
I remember when I would do something stupid. I remember Bishop Lewis would ask me, he's like, why did you do that? And I'd say, well, I don't know what I was thinking. He says, I can answer that. You weren't thinking. That's why you did it. You weren't thinking. And it's actually how marvelous really the human mind is. And just from our own personal experience, when you delve into your memories, and I can remember how a certain song, how it actually sounds without hearing it. I can remember the smell and sensory memory and everything, and how we're able in just our mind's eye to picture ourselves anywhere in space or time, if you want to put it that way. So that imagination is something that has to be explored and developed, because one of the things we are told to do, as I remember it, as a novice in meditation, is especially dealing with the life of Christ, to place ourselves as if we were there when these events took place. Like if you were there at the foot of the cross, you were there at the Last Supper, you were there when our Lord gave the Sermon on the Mount, to imagine yourself, what would it be like? And you need to be able to put yourself in that place. And you have to be able to think outside of the box of your everyday experience. And it's through that actually that helps us to work out our everyday experiences. Like they say, about dreams. Very often our dreams are our subconscious trying to work out problems. So we're doing this instead of in our subconscious, we're doing this consciously in our imagination, and how we deal with situations, and also in this, and how we, come to know, love, and serve God better. I bring that up with the dream, and I kind of laugh because last night I had a dream. I think I was St. Peter.
Oh.
I think I was St. Peter, and I think he worked in a grocery store or something. And I knew I had to get this church started, and I didn't know where to begin, and I was being hunted. I'm pretty sure I was St. Peter.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
Were you working in the seafood department?
I don't get it. Oh, well, no, that was funny.
Because when you said dreams and how sometimes are things that you're trying to work out, of course, dreams that I have, it's like, well, I guess if there's something to that, I'm the type of person you want around if, you're strapped to a bomb, because apparently I know how to dismantle it with a paper clip and a piece of chewing gum, because I'm the female MacGyver. So, which I'm not. Don't don't come to me.
All right, sister, which wire do we cut? I don't know. The clown is not here. What I need the clown here to know what to do. He tells me. The clown? The clown.
Now, back to more sublime things. During the season of Lent, I often like to remind the people, especially children, to think of our Lord and his suffering, either on Calvary, the way to Calvary,
yes,
Holy Thursday, and ask yourself, put yourself there, but ask yourself, what person am I? Where do I stand here in all these events.
Mm-hmm.
Am I Judas? Have I betrayed Christ with a kiss? Am I the lazy three apostles who cannot keep their eyes awake while Christ is praying? And then it's just too hard for me to watch and pray. Am I the rabble crying out, his blood be upon us and upon our children? Am I even the high priest who leading this mob against Christ? Am I Pontius Pilate? Am I the executioners? If I were there, who would I be? We know all these different characters from the Passion of Christ, and the question is, who am I in all of this? And I can answer that simply by examining my conscience. My betrayal of Christ. Have I denied Christ like St. Peter and then repented? Should I repent? Have I betrayed Christ like Judas? And now if I have, is salvation still open to me? Is there still room for me to repent? Am I good and faithful St. John, who followed Christ all the way to Calvary and stood there beneath the cross? I like to think I would be St. John of the Cross, St. John beneath the cross there, embracing the Blessed Mother and taking her as my mother and having myself be her son. But then reality sets in and say, nope, I don't think that's me. But I have no doubt that there are souls that have those same sentiments, have that same love that St. John had, that same indomitable fearlessness. I don't care what they do to me. And then there are those who will boast like St. Peter, but then when push comes to shove, they find out truly how weak we are. But these are things we do in our imagination. And I think these are good, and we need to develop these and to teach our children how to develop these in themselves. I think we don't give children enough opportunity to, as Father Anthony would say, freedom to fail. Sister reminds me that I quote this very frequently, but I thought that was a very good idea, a very good concept, that we need to open up the ability so that we are free to fail.
It's not original.
Yeah.
I just want to make that known.
But
that was from pedagogy.
It was your article that reminded it or refreshed it in my mind, I guess. And so I go back to that article because it was quite refreshing. I think too often our society is telling us it's better to do nothing than to make a mistake.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I think that is the biggest mistake. There's a quote that my grandfather used to say that there's more harm done by indecision than wrong decision. It is better to do something, even if it is wrong, than to do nothing. If you do make a mistake, you can always repent of that mistake. You can always go back to rectify that mistake. But if you do nothing, there's nothing positive. There's nothing to be gained from it. I think, what is that they say, Thomas Edison invented 200 light bulbs that didn't work, but he had 200 examples of things that did not work. He learned something. This was not
you
for
nothing. You did read the article.
Yeah. So it was not for nothing that he made these mistakes. And so we need to open this up for ourselves, but even for our children. I think too often we come down hard on children. This is wrong. Don't do this again. And we don't give them the appreciation to say, okay, yes, that was wrong, but how can we fix it? And allow them to problem solve, allow them to use their imagination. Think about this. At the altar, the servers generally will come and take the chalice veil from me and fold it. And then when they return it, they hand it back to me to cover the chalice at the end of Mass. And of course, training the servers to hand the veil to me so that I don't have to turn it around when I go to cover the chalice. And I recall a young man standing there. He's waiting for me to take this veil, but I'm still folding up the corporal and getting things ready. And I turned to him. I said, think about it. So to think about how you're going to hand me that veil, so that when I take it, I will be able to just place it over the chalice. And of course, he's there switching it around this way and that way, but allow him to figure it out. Don't say, turn it around. You got it upside down. No, you got to hand it to me with the outside facing me. No explanation. You think about it. You figure it out.
Well,
and by the time I was ready, he handed it to me perfectly.
Yes, but it added 10 minutes to mass. But no, well, it's a great opportunity with you here, Your Excellency, to, talk about my experiences with you in that regard when I was a young man. And that not say my father, we wouldn't have conversations like this, but he's not technically minded. Neither am I. I'm better. I'm probably the most technically minded of anyone in this room right now. But
that's because Chesterton isn't here.
Yeah, he's over at church right now. But it's just, you would say stuff like that to me, and I'd look at you like I don't know where to go from here. Best example I have is right after we built the second level to the barn for the library, and we had the organ. And I'm moving everything up. I said, "Okay, Father, I'm ready to move the organ. Can I get your help?" Well, did you try it yourself? It's an organ. What do you mean try? Well, you think about it. You try to figure out yourself, and if you can't do it, you come back to me, and I'll help you. And I'm like, okay. Walking away thinking, if he said he was just busy, just tell me so. And well, lo and behold, I got it up. You figured it out. And
How did you figure it out?
Well, basically, I just figured that if I could get it angled, because the slope of the stairs was just right, I was able to basically just get it flat and just push it up, slide it up. It wasn't easy, but
it wasn't a huge organ either, though.
No, it wasn't ridiculously big. We're not talking about like a pipe organ, but still, you normally don't move this stuff by yourself. And also doing projects. Okay, Father, I'm finished. You want to take a good look at my work? Well, did you do a good job? Well, so I want you to look. Well, do you think you did a good job? I think, well, if you think you did a good job, that's all that matters. So, okay. So I went back and redid it. It sure was good, because it does make you think. It's like, well, what's a good job for a kid who doesn't really care what they want? So learning to care about the work.
I know the answer to this, but other minds may want to know. So did Father Giles ever come back and check on you with the organ just to make sure you didn't?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Very casually, just kind of meandered over. Oh, got it up, did you? Good. Says, well, it took you so long, you didn't come back. I figured either you got it or you were dead. So, so we did it. So, and it's also in this teaching children, young people, how to think outside the box. And even in our spiritual life, we have to think outside the box. We get so wrapped up in just the vocal prayer, which the vocal prayers are important. They're so good. And they really help us direct our affections most efficaciously, especially since our Lord gave us the Our Father himself, which is the best prayer. But now to take time to actually quiet the world around us, to really meditate. And I was thinking about that just earlier this week about meditation, and like, what is the what makes true, well, we'll just say, well, Catholic meditation superior to meditation you see all throughout the world? Because you go to places nowadays, they have, meditation while they're doing yoga, meditation while they're, some kind of Buddhist temple and this, and then you see a lot of hums and people sitting in a position where you're pretty sure their legs half fallen asleep and going like this. I say, what makes true meditation we're speaking of superior to that? And I said, well, there's only one thing. Even you want to go all the way to the Buddhists, where people want to look at very sublime, very austere, and this Eastern mysticism. Say, but one thing is that it is narcissistic. It's its nature. It's self-absorbed. It's about you. True meditation is about God.
Well, I think most of the pagan meditation is about nothingness, this emptiness, this what's it called, nirvana. So they're trying to empty their mind of everything, as opposed to religious or Catholic meditation. We are trying to fill the mind with God, and God isn't nothing. God is everything. So you can see it's almost like a demonic. They want to remove everything from the mind, everything from the imagination.
That's impossible.
And to be in this numb state where you're not feeling anything, you're not experiencing anything, you just exist. You just are, as opposed to the Catholic meditation where we are using our imagination to place ourselves before God. And we're either, adoring God or filling our hearts and minds with gratitude, adoration, penance, mortification, humility. We are trying to establish within our hearts and minds some positive aspect of God. And I think really that's the distinction. All the Eastern meditations, the focus, at least from what I've read, is that they are trying to reach this state of nothingness, where everything just kind of melds into one. And this emptiness I see really as something that is demonic, because the devil doesn't like anything that God has created. The devil wants to go back to his own nothingness from whence he came. And yes, on Ash Wednesday, we are reminded that we are dust, and unto dust we shall return. But this is not nothingness, because we know the soul is not going to die. The soul lives on forever. But we are humbled. We're not seeking this dissolution of the body. Actually, we're looking forward to the resurrection of the body at the end of the time, at the general resurrection. But our thoughts, our imagination, that interior voice where we are speaking to God, or where we are quieting that interior voice, that is not nothing, that is something, because now when we are quiet, we are listening to God. We're listening to our conscience. We are listening for our guardian angel to speak to us. And of course, how do I distinguish what is my guardian angel, which is my conscience, which is God speaking to me? What are the whisperings of the devil? Because we also know the devil will appear as an angel of light, and that I must be able to discern these. I must be able to test these. And so there is a lot that's going on in the quiet and the stillness of our soul. And I think that's a big mistake we make, to look at someone who is sitting still and think they are doing nothing. Because their mind must be going on. Something is going on inside there. What it is, I don't know. Perhaps only God knows. Sometimes even the individual doesn't know. But our goal is not nothingness. Our goal is to be filled with Christ. And I think, from St. Paul, it is no longer I, but it is Christ living within me. And this is the goal, I think, of this meditation of the inner voice, is to bring ourselves in front of God and to have Christ enter within us, and to become truly this temple of the Holy Ghost, so that when we finish our meditation, our imagination has been useful in seeing Christ coming to me, the Holy Ghost coming to me, and that now I must go forth and live accordingly. I must go forth and act accordingly. I must go forth and speak accordingly, because this is who I am. This is who God has made me. And of course, St. Paul, I am what I am by the grace of God. And hopefully we can all add to that. And his grace has not been useless or fruitless within me.
Well, that's leads to one other, we could say the final aspect, and only because it's the final thing we'll be talking about, is when we have that, the fruits from the meditation, not to just walk away from meditation and act like nothing has happened. That to forget meditating. Well, that was just for that time of the day. Now I'm gonna go back out and do everything else I have to do. And whether it's my job, whether it's some kind of entertainment. What really we should be aspiring to is a detachment from the world, from needing to be around all these things, not as a point of vanity, but because it disrupts that unity with God and his divine will. So this is why we are encouraged throughout the day to turn our minds to God in everything we do, whether it's work, play, and not to flood our minds with useless worldly drivel, because in the end, that's not going to do us any good. But God is not going to care how many sports scores you remembered, or he's not going to care about what happened on this reality TV show that you wasted so many hours watching. He does not care about that stuff. So you have to think about what's important in your life. And really, if you examine yourself, just the fact of being a Catholic, what you're expected to do. But are we just going to be nominal Catholics? Are we going to be truly imitators of Christ, who gave us the example of meditation, who gave us the example of how to retreat from the world? He went into the world, he preached, he taught his disciples, but he also had times when he went by himself into the mountains to pray. So we also have to have a time to go into a place of silence to pray, to reflect upon what we have done that day. Have we pleased God? Maybe have we offended him? Or what ways can we do better? We can grow closer. What are these holy sentiments? And this is a practice that we have to continue. You have to develop it. Each day. We just read something recently, and I can't remember where. I feel like I talked to Sister about it, but the people, they seem to think that if I could just go back to the beginning of my conversion, if I could just go back there, it'd be good. Well, no, that was your starting point. Every day you should be growing closer and closer to God. And that's the goal. Because you don't know when that journey is going to end. But you want to make sure that when it does, you will be as close to God as you possibly could be in this life with his grace. And this is what's important. And this is what we have to impress upon our young children to develop. What's the old saying? You have to crawl before you can walk. You have to go little by little, introducing children to it one thing at a time. And as I said before, if you don't do it, your children are not going to do it. So having conversations about God, about the saints, about the Blessed Mother, about your guardian angel, who is there, by the way. These are things will inspire the imagination. I mean, what's wrong about a child thinking about what would it be like to be a missionary? What would it be like to live in a convent, to live in a monastery, using their imagination to do so? It can be very healthy. And these are the type of things that you'd want to encourage them on. And hopefully they take it as they grow older, they develop it. And if they have children, they pass it down. And that is what we're hoping to have here. Uh, it's not something you just, turn on and turn off. It's something that we have to continuously do, because not only we're speaking to God, we're listening to him and listening for the stirrings of the Holy Ghost to lead us on the proper path. It's pleasing to him. So it's requires something of us.
Well, I did mention my father frequently asking us what we were thinking about, what's going on in our minds. But I never thought to ask my father, what are you thinking about? It was always, he put me on the spot. And I'm thinking, parents, it is a wonderful thing to ask your children, what's on your mind? What's happening in your life? And listen to them, pay attention, find out what they're thinking about. But also, don't wait for your children to ask you. You might be able to just spontaneously tell them, well, it's interesting that you don't have anything to think about. You're thinking about nothing, but I was thinking about the Blessed Mother and how pleased she is that we are making the sacrifice to say the rosary every day, or that, how disappointed she was that we weren't able to say the rosary yesterday. We need to perhaps say it with more devotion, but to show the children that you are thinking. Show them that there are worthwhile things to think about, and that this isn't something just for church. I'm driving down the road and I see that somebody cuts me off, and okay, rather than get upset and say, well, I'm sorry for that person, something must be bothering them. They're distracted in their driving, they're not paying attention. I wonder, something must be going wrong in their life, and to let your children know. Let's say a prayer for that person driving over there. They must be having a bad day. Mm-hmm. Maybe their guardian angel will protect them because they're not actually driving safely.
That's the nicest response I've ever heard to that.
There's no harm in pointing out to the children that their driving is unsafe, mm-hmm. or that this was not correct. The obvious is okay to point out, but our reaction to it, we need to instruct the children. I was thinking about how terrible that was, but I should really be thinking about what's bothering this person, and I should be concerned about their soul. And so, would you say a Hail Mary with me for that person, so that there are, let's say, the Angel of God prayer for that person, so that that person will be protected, and perhaps everybody else on the road, and we will all be protected from the damage that someone's distracted driving has happened. We don't know what's going on in their life. We don't know what pain they're in, but we can always pray and to offer that excuse. But your children are not going to be able to read that in your mind. They will see when you're angry and you're cursing, shaking your fist, or other things at the driver going down the road. Your children will see that.
Yeah.
And they will think this is appropriate behavior. When somebody frustrates you, makes you angry, this is the way to react, because this is the way my mom reacts. This is the way my dad reacts. This is the way other drivers react. I see it. So this is what I must do when I get older. And we need to give them the example. No, this perhaps was my first thought. You can explain to your children, this was my first reaction is anger and frustration, but that is wrong. I should have compassion, empathy, and explain to your children and ask them to help pray for this individual, or pray for me, so that I don't lose my temper, so that I don't go off, because when I lose my temper, that makes me a bad driver too. The first thing I need to do is remain calm for myself and for those around us. Time of emergency, I need to stay calm. That's the first rule. Don't get excited, stay calm. No matter what's going on, stay calm. You may be shooting blood out of an artery, but if you're not going to stay calm enough to put pressure or compress on that blood shooting out, it's all chaos and you're going to do more harm than good. What should I do? We teach children, if you catch on fire, you must stop, drop, and roll. Of course, your first inclination when you're burning is to run away. And the more you run, the more you fan the flames and the higher the flames get.
Charles, are you trying to run away from the flame? Because the flame is on you.
Yeah. So if you can remain calm and teach the children, this is what we must do. And I think that is done by example. And I think really parents, elders need to tell children, this is what I was thinking about. This is what I was imagining. This is what I would hope would happen. It's not happening that way. Let the children know the thought process.
Yeah. Yes.
And listen to their thought process. And very often they will be able to come to a correct conclusion, and they will perhaps be able to help you as much as you are able to help them.
Well, that's really having a very
adult conversation
with your child, but not what we consider adult in this world. Things they taught to the children. People, you say, I talked to my child as if they were an adult, and usually it's some kind of worldly nonsense. But here is really having a conversation, developing their spiritual thinking,
the maturity,
and the maturity, and in that you are filling them with true wisdom. It's really part of the gift that we can give them, and being able to help them think on their own to coming to this, the most sublime conclusion, which is unity with God. And it's all a little bit each day, and we work at it. And that's a wonderful example, Your Excellency. And I hope people listen to that and really say to put that into practice, actually talk it out. You don't have to wait till your child does something wrong. Even if they do something good, talk it out, discuss it. What were you thinking? How are you acting? Did you offer it to God when you did it? How can you offer it to God? What did you think about God today? It's like the old question. What did you learn from today's sermon? God. That's God great. Now, expound upon that. So.
Well, and that is essential, this whole thinking, especially when it comes to our faith, because as you get older, and we've all probably experienced, you're going to get challenged in your belief. And if you're just relying on the things that you memorized, it's a good foundation. But how do you expect to defend your faith if you aren't actually having discussions or even like mild debates per se? That is part of your responsibility to prepare them, because ideally you raise children. Some of them are going to get married and have children of their own. We want to be able to pass on the faith, and we know that just memorizing the Baltimore Catechism is not really knowing anything. You're not thinking. Those things are important. They're building blocks. But as the children get older, and actually I don't even think you have to wait too long. Just start having discussions. And don't be afraid if they come up with something that you weren't prepared for. And I'm talking something very pious, because I feel like children in many ways are far more close. Well, they're far more closer to our Lord. But don't be afraid of what you might not know. And again, the bishop often says, if you don't know the answer, it's okay to admit that, but say, let's go find the answer. There's plenty of books, or there's someone out there that can answer for you. And that's also part of that journey of discovery. We really need to just keep striving to discover God. It's actually very fascinating when you do.
Well, I think a lot of focus is placed on correcting the children, instructing the children. But as I say, they're going to learn from example. Your children are going to see you make a mistake. Don't deny the mistake. Own it. And what have you done by that? You've taught your children not to lie. You made a mistake. Own it. Okay. I messed up. Okay. And there's no harm in telling your children, I made a mistake. I gave the example of getting frustrated and driving on the road, on the highway. If you lose your cool and your children are there in the car, own it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I gave you this bad example. That was not appropriate behavior. I would not allow that in you, and I should not allow it in myself. Own it. Let your children see the humility, the contrition. You can even say an act of contrition, say it out loud with the child. Would you pray for me? Pray with me, so that I will do better the next time. Help me overcome this fault. This is not the way I should act, and I am ashamed of this. Then the children will not have to discover that you're human. They will know it right from the beginning, but they will also know you made a mistake. This is how we correct it. This is the way to advance. This is the way to be better. It's not just
you're raising an understanding child.
And that's the whole goal. We want a child who prays and interacts with God, who wants to go to heaven and is taking the positive steps that are necessary to get there. And I think too often parents want to present themselves as the perfect adult in the child's life. And they want their child to think the best of them. But thinking the best of you doesn't mean that you have to be perfect, because you're not. And I think the sooner we own that, the better off we are going to be, and the better off our children will be for it as well.
Oh, well, thank you, Your Excellency. I will always love it when you come on, and I know people would love it if you were on all the time. But too much of a good thing.
And absence makes a heart grow
it makes
fonder.
you go fonder. But I will finish. I'll ask you, because this was inspired through an article in the Seraph. If anyone is interested in subscribing to the Seraph, what would they have to do?
You want to handle that, Sister? Advertising?
Well, you can contact us. You can email His Excellency at father@friarsminor.org, and we can get you on the mail list. You can write to us.
Snail mail.
Snail mail. If you go to franciscanfathers.com, that information's on there, including the email address, I believe the home telephone number. You could leave a comment on our video. You can email us at aimhigher.podcast@gmail.com. I can take care of that. We may the next episode of the Seraph, the next issue of the Seraph. I was thinking I'm making a QR code. So we're starting to get a little bit fancier in our endeavors. So I did notice a few extra views on the 7 Joys video I made for Growing in Holiness. So because there was a QR code put on the Sunday sermon printout. So
what how much is a yearly subscription?
Suggested donation
is $20 per year.
Per year. So
Here.
Yep.
So it comes
$2
an issue.
There you go.
Yep. There's just, besides July and August, there's an issue every month. So
well, I guess it's a little time, a little break, come up with new ideas. Maybe take care of a few fish or some plants.
Yes.
Just work on the calendar. There's always
go
something.
fishing.
Or there, for me, it's mow the lawn, or as dry as it's been, mow the dirt and the crabgrass, and but so if anyone is interested, there you go, and well, thank you, Your Excellency, again, and I'll say thank you, Sister, because I don't thank you enough.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Father. You're very welcome.
And we're going to say, Deo gracias.
Well, can we get a blessing from His Excellency? Don't you think that would be
Certainly. Benedictio de omnipotentis, Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti, descendet super vos, et manet semper. Amen.
Sorry, Father.
You got to learn to go with the flow, Sister. It was the perfect ending. Got to go with the flow. Or I just got to remember, what's got to be less of a Martha and more of a Mary, and that choose the better. And I always could do with a blessing. And I think
he was ready for it. I could see his posture was.
Come on, ask for it, Father. So, well, with that said. Deo gratias.
Deo gratias.